guys, it's Glenn from glenscarcollection.com, and today's video is my 5-year review of my 2005 Acura NSX. What better way to do this review while I'm doing a drive with the NSX Club? You could find these drive at nsx.prime. And once a year, we have an annual river run along the Delaware River, which separates New Jersey from Pennsylvania. We have about 30 NSXs. We drive about 100 miles and then have a nice lunch. We meet early in the morning, and we just started our drive now. So this is my 5-year anniversary with this car. I bought it in 2016 around Memorial Day. And previous to that, I had a black 1995 with a tan interior NSX for about 4 years. So my NSX ownership really began in July of 2014. In July 2014, these cars were dirt cheap. I bought my first NSX for about 25 grand, and I sold it 4 years later for almost 50 grand. I bought this car for about 60 grand, and I just had an appraisal for insurance, and it's $150,000. I don't know if I could really get $150,000, but I'll take it. It's an 05, the last year, in the most sought-after color, Long Beach Blue Pearl. They made 88 Long Beach Blue Pearl cars from 02 to 05, and they only made about 200-something cars total in the last year, 2005, and only like 20-something of those cars are Long Beach Blue Pearl. So what do I like, what I don't like, what I considered before buying this car? Would I do it all again? What are their maintenance costs? Insurance costs? We'll go over all that in this video. So remember, if you like these kind of videos, hit the subscribe button. If you're already a subscriber, hit the notification bell. Like and share these videos so our channel can grow. And as always, leave a positive comment below. For some reason, we pulled over and let this UPS truck in front of us, and now we're slowed up. So I like to give this car the beans. So what's great about this car, it's mid-engine. The engine is right behind your head. I don't know how well this is going to sound, but I hear it right in my ears. I don't know about you guys. But mid-engine platform. I love mid-engine cars. It's my favorite, mid-engine and rear engine. If it was up to me, those are the only cars I would own. I wouldn't even own a front-engine car. Now, this car in 97, so 91 to 96, they're called NA1 cars, the first generation, and that NA1 is actually in your VIN number. In 97, they bumped up the engine from a 3-liter V6 to a 3.2, gave it another 20 horsepower. More importantly, they changed it from a 5-speed manual to a 6-speed. So you got shorter gearing. I forget, since I had an NA1 for so long, half the time I forget I have 6th gear and almost never use it unless I'm on a long highway stretch trying to conserve gas like I am today, because where we are, gas stations are few and far between. Difference in acceleration between the two is about a half a second due to the 20 extra horsepower, but mainly, in my opinion, the shorter gearing. The NA2 cars with the 6-speed keeps you in the VTEC. So what hurt your acceleration on the NA1 cars is when you did a red line shift from first to second, you fall out of the VTEC, where this car keeps you in the VTEC the whole time. It's a very linear VTEC, and this is the first car it sold in the US with VTEC, then the S2000. The S2000, like an on and off switch, it almost feels like the turbo kicked in when you get up to those high RPMs on my S2000. This car's very linear. You don't notice the VTEC as much, so sometimes it doesn't feel as fast. The NA1 cars are about 5.7 seconds 0 to 60, and if you have a AP2 S2000 like I do, they feel almost the same 0 to 60. Maybe the S2000 is like 6.3 or something like that, but they feel very, very similar. The NSX, if you did a street start, really would be about 5.2 seconds 0 to 60. If you really wanted to dump the clutch at high RPMs like Motor Week or Car and Driver, they got in the high 4s, but that's probably not a realistic. And even if it is in the high 4s or low 5s, it feels a little slower than it is because of that linear VTEC. If you drive this in isolation and you have slower cars as your daily driver, you'll think this is a fast car. If you have fast cars like me, this won't seem like such a fast car. Of course, it always seems faster if you have the roof off, because you get that wind in the hair experience. So one great thing about the NSX, besides mid-engine, and 91% of them came with manual transmissions, is it's very comfortable in here. So it doesn't beat you up like an exotic car would be, and it appeals to people of all ages, the younger people like us, like the manual transmissions, the rear drive, but it appeals to a lot of older people and retirees because it's a very comfortable ride. You can take your significant other on a drive like this, as long as you don't go too crazy in the turns, they'll have an enjoyable experience. Now, this is a car that was designed in the late 80s and came in 1991, so it does have body roll, and it does have a lot of terrible wind buffeting, especially on the highway. So 99% of the time I drive this car with the roof down, but except on the highway or when I'm recording like now, because we would get just so much wind noise. Gas mileage is great. I've already driven like 100 miles today. I probably got about 30 miles to the gallon on the highway. Now, this has some things that would surprise you about this car. It has a electric steering, just like the S2000. When you drive this car, there's so much feel, you would swear it's hydraulic. But it does, my car does have, 2005 model does have electric steering. If you want to do a track day, so years ago when I did track days in my Corvette, there were NSX at track days because they were $25,000, $30,000 cars, same as Corvettes. So you saw a lot of NSXs on track days. What doesn't hold up on these cars if you drive really hard or on the track are the brakes. They're just, they're not powerful enough, they're not big enough for the car, and they fade pretty quickly. But on the street, they're perfectly fine. You have plenty of braking power. But when I've driven really, really hard on spirited roads, I can tell you that brakes go away pretty fast. And you'll smell them when you get out. I don't know about today, but typically you'll smell them. We pull over too much waiting for people. There's nobody that we have to wait for. Then we get all stone chips on our car. All right, so while we're stopped, what else can I tell you? Well, there's only one outlet plug here. So what I do is I have the radar plug there, and then I get a radar with a USB so I can have my phone and my Waze. So I don't need Apple CarPlay because I have the Waze right there. I can see anything else that's going on. Obviously, no Bluetooth back in these days. No backup camera, no navigation. Very simple. You got air conditioning controls, a cassette. And back in the day, you could put your cassette here when you had iPods and get the little adapter. Who are we waiting for? Why do we keep pulling over? The speedometer here goes to 180 miles an hour. The battery is always high volt. I keep this on, it's always well above 12. It looks like it's always about 14 to 16. I always keep it on a charger, so my battery has lasted a very long time. Fuel miles, like I said, is excellent. It's a very, very reliable car. So it's so reliable that today when I turned it on, I actually had a check engine light. And I had a code reader from the E46 M3. If you own BMWs, you have to have a code reader. It was a O2 sensor. All right. Here we go. That's the problem when you go on drives. When you have too many cars, you got to keep pulling over because there's always one straggler. And then you got to keep pulling over, waiting for the one straggler. But anyway, so I love the gauges here. I'm so old school. I'm not a big fan of digital gauges, so every car should have gauges like this, where it's so huge, the tachometer and the speedometer, very easy to read. This car on the highway likes to be exactly 80 miles an hour, exactly 80 miles an hour. So you can be in fifth gear, sixth gear. Sixth gear, you're probably at 3,000 RPM. Fifth gear at 80, you're probably at 4,000 RPM. So why did I choose the NSX? Well, I chose the NSX. I didn't choose it a lot of times, so I always bought either 911s or Cayman S's or Exige S's instead of the NSX because I always said that's a more modern car. It's going to be more useful. It didn't really make sense to get the NSX. And one thing I forgot to mention, I do have an exhaust on this car, a Pride. I think it's a Pride V2 version 2 exhaust. It fits either NA1s or NA2s. And I had on my NA1, I liked it so much, when I bought an NA2, I transferred it over. Always keep the stock exhaust for resale. What else? So I always bought something else. You know, just I thought a more modern Porsche would be more usable than this car. And then when I bought my first NSX, the black and tan 95, I couldn't believe how usable this car actually was. And I'm like, you know what? I should have bought an NSX 10 years ago and I could have just driven the hell of it. So people always own two NSXs. You go, why own two NSXs? Well, in front of us, my friend just bought an 02, and he also has a 98 or 99 in blue. I think it's Monaco blue, the one he has, and that's supercharged, heavily modified. He bought this one with 100,000 miles just to drive the hell out of, and that's why people own two. One for the collectability, like I should have really kept my black 95, put 100, 200,000 miles on it, kept this blue one for resale. That would have been the ultimate. And if I had the garage space or the money, I'd probably do that. But I like to experience so many different cars at once, so why have two NSXs? But I did have two for one time. So when I had my black and tan 95, I had that. I bought that in 2014, 2016. When I started this channel, I bought the M2. And then I said, you know what? The only reason that would ever make me sell my black 95, because I probably went through 30 or 40 cars in the years that I owned that. And I said, the only thing that would ever make me sell would be a blue 05, because that's like the rarest unicorn NSX. And sure enough, a month after I bought the M2, one came up in Southern California, so I bought it. And then I had two NSXs because I kind of bought this sight unseen with just a PPI, so I wanted to make sure that I didn't sell my black one, which was perfect, even though it had high mileage, until I knew that I had this car. So once I got this car home and I saw it was just as perfect as advertised, then I sold the black one, who wound up being one of our subscribers who owned some really cool cars, and we're still in touch. And I'm jealous that they have my black one, because that's probably the most, next to this, that's probably the most reliable car I've ever owned. So definitely check out the NSX. They're pretty easy to maintain. Oil changes, a timing belt every 7 to 10 years, depending who you believe. I've gone 8 years without this timing belt. I'm due. I tried to get one done before this drive, but believe it or not, they're on back order. So make sure you have a certified NSX, some NSX guru doing your timing belt. Don't just let anybody do it. These are expensive cars, so you want to insure them properly. I used to have this car insured for $70,000 because I bought it for $60,000, and now I just upped the insurance to $150,000 because that's what it's been appraised for. So make sure you have your insurance covered. There's obviously stipulations with that agreed value insurance. You can't take it to work. It's always got to be garage. So make sure you read the fine print and you know, just have it properly insured. But these are very reliable cars. So even 91s, early cars were all coupes, 91 to 94. They didn't go to the target in 95. So the first one I targeted was a 95 for that reason, because I just wanted to have the open air experience. It wasn't going to be a second car for me. It was going to be like a fifth or sixth car. So I wanted that that open air experience. It just adds a little more excitement to me, at least I think so. So difference between NE1 and NE2, so you could spot some visual differences. 02, they have that rear valance there and a different, the fixed headlights, a couple other features. It just looks more muscular, I think, and more mean for the 02, the 05, so that's what I prefer. Some people prefer the pop-up headlights, and they are super cool. I do prefer some things about the pop-up headlights, like the look, but the pop-up headlights don't really work too well at night because those bulbs are like a dying flashlight. So if you're going to use this car a lot, like say on summer nights or drive it all year round, you probably want an 02, 05 just for better headlights. There are some you know, common problems on early cars, but since they're 30 years old now, just hit its 30-year anniversary for model year 1991, most of those problems have been sorted out. So there's a thing where the air conditioning gets stuck on high. There's some other things that I forget, but with this car, I've basically done an annual oil change, and then I'm going to do an air filter. I'm going to put in a new battery. So even though the battery's old, even though I keep it on the tenders, safe insurance to have a fresher battery, and then the timing belt. So I would have done the timing belt last year, 7 years. This is already the third timing belt, but I'm telling you, when I looked at my 95, there were cars that were 15 years on the original timing belt. So I'm sure you could go much longer. It really depends on how the car's stored and temperature change and stuff like that. And then, should you get an NE1 or NE2? Well, for your first NSX, I would get an NE1. There used to be about $15,000 difference. There's a lot less NE2s made, so it may be greater, and especially with the car market being crazy now, it may be greater than $15,000 now, but get in an NA1, enjoy it. You get 90% of the experience. You certainly don't need a 6-speed from a 5-speed, but that extra 20 horsepower and shorter gearing will make a difference. And obviously resale value, because the NA2s are rarer, but you know, I wouldn't fret it. My first one was an NA1, and I think most people, their first NSX is an NA1, and that's what I think you should do. I don't think you need to spend the extra money. If you're really crazy about NSXs and love it, it's your favorite car like me, then go for the NA2, but otherwise I think you're fine. All right, so I hope I answered all that question, We went over reliability, maintenance, insurance, what I chose instead, why I felt this car, and again, biggest thing with this car, it's a blast to drive. If it costs twice as much to maintain, I'm okay with it. Timing belts cost between $1,800 and $2,800, say $2,800 at a certified NSX dealer with a trained mechanic, $1,800 probably if you went to an aftermarket guru who specializes in the NSX. And I think that's pretty much it. You know, sometimes the windows roll down slowly and stuff like that. You have a little spare tire in the front. Make sure your tires are always blown up. You have to, it's located above the battery, so to change the battery, you got to take the spare tire out. But this is a very lightweight car. It's a very nimble car. It's fantastic on the highway with a longer wheelbase. So it's not a good autocross car. The S2000 is a shorter wheelbase, likes to turn in better. This will have a little bit of understeer when you first turn in, and that understeer can turn into snap oversteer. So people crash these cars in the wet because they don't have stability control, or they turn in too hard, get that understeer, and they're not ready for the snap oversteer because it comes without warning. But if you're a good driver and know how to drive, you shouldn't have that problem. It's typically somebody driving above their skills where that happens. And that's about it. The only thing this car needs, I believe, is an exhaust, because it's way too quiet from the factory. When I got my first NSX, my kids didn't know that I came down the street in the driveway. I said, oh, we got to fix that with a loud exhaust. And this exhaust is very good because there's really no drone unless I'm at maybe 6th gear at 2,000 RPMs. All right, guys, so that's my review. I plan on keeping this car a real long time. If you ever see this car for sale, then you know I'm having some kind of problem, but I love this car and I'm going to keep it a long time. All right, guys, remember, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.